Can you hear us? Great, thank you. My name is Victor Arias, and really happy to be here with you all with these great panelists. We've heard a lot about data. The definition of data is that it's the factual information that is used to create reasoning and discussion. And data eliminates subjectivity, it takes passion out of many of the discussions, and it kind of levels the playing field. So it's very important to take that data and then create action out of it. And I'll just quote a very famous poet who said, "No hay que llegar primero, pero hay que saber llegar." So yeah, so Jose Alfredo Jimenez, I think that's truly the right message for this, is how do we arm ourselves with data and use that to create action. So I think you have the names of all the panelists here up front, and so we're very happy for you all to join us. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to start off with a minute opening statement about the subject, and we will start with Roberto de Santos, and so go ahead, Robert.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Hola. Okay, so we saw Roberto from the Census Bureau, my colleague, come up and talk about the increasing growth, the ever growth of the Latino population. And more generally, our country is becoming more beautifully diverse. And guess what? That means society needs to acculturate to us. It's inevitable. But we can help, and we can help not just with data that are available through the Census Bureau, but also with your minds, with your perspectives. Because what I've found over a 40-year career in public policy research is that you need to bring your whole self to the table, your culture, your values, your life experiences. You combine that with the data that we have available, and you will get some amazing insights that only we can offer to help society acculturate. Thank you.
Thank you. And I couldn't work for the census because I don't have a ponytail. So anyway, Elvita.
Thank you, Elvita Quiñones with Salesforce. So just curious, can you raise your hand if you track your steps? Does anyone track their steps in here? Anyone use something to track your food intake, calories? Right? Okay. That data can be pretty powerful. It can help us, right? And that's just a microcosm of what the power of data. We use that to measure, right, if we're effective in our health. And so for me, it's important when I think about data, and especially when it pertains to the Latino community, what gets measured gets done, right? Data collection, analysis, and the insights that we share. And so if we're working in the direction to measure data, we're making smart business decisions. We're not just making decisions on a whim. And if it's not being measured, how do we know that we're making progress towards our goal? How do we know we're heading in the right direction? How do we know that our employees, our students, our customers, our end users, how do we know without that data to back up our business decisions? So it's critical and to ensure we're fulfilling the needs of our programs, moving the needles forward according to whatever industry that you're in. And it holds us accountable. And so as we talk today, I'd like you to think about how you are measuring your data and what tools you're using in the midst of that. And if you're not, think about implementing a tool to measure data. Thank you.
Thank you, Vita. Okay, Jose.
Thank you so much. Well, I will say that the abundance of data that you have seen today, what we hope to do as a panel is just put it into practical terms. Just help you understand what you can do in your position, whether you're in a corporate environment, whether you're in an advocacy environment, whether you're in a buying, marketing, advertising, whether you're working with a political activist group or whether you're ensuring that the activism is being heard. The data that we are providing and that you're seeing here is nothing more than just your ammunition. The practical elements is what we're hoping as a panel to give you some ideas on how you can go out and exercise that data and how to leverage that data to ensure that you're being far more effective in your roles and far more effective in ensuring that that communication gets relayed. So hopefully by the end of this, we've given you sufficient ammo, we've given you sufficient information that, and examples that you can leverage in your current environment.
Thank you, Jose. And now the other, Jennifer Lopez.
Jennifer, if I'm in trouble. No, well, we heard it. Data is important. I want to add three things, and it's never underestimate the power of representation, intentionality, yes. And the reason I say this is because I got into my role 3 years ago. I lead global talent acquisition, and we're a very data-driven company. So we had our North Star. These are all the aspirational goals that we have, and they say, Jenny, the Latinos is just the way it is. They don't have the degrees. They are not going to come here to work, so don't worry about them. So if I wasn't Jenny Lopez that comes to events like this one and listens to the data that Claudia and her team puts together in front of us every year so we can keep the pulse, I would say, okay, that's the way it is. But no, that's whenever I say, I know better, right? So we need to be very intentional. One size does not fit all. We have to have very intentional approaches to interact with our Latino talent, which I'm going to give more examples later. So the power, again, of data, of us providing that context that tells the story, yes, having intentionality and knowing that one size does not fit all, that's whenever magic takes place.
Fantastic, thank you. And so I'll start with Roberto first. I know that, with Robert, I know that your colleague gave some examples of tools. What else can the Bureau of Census kind of help us with data to arm ourselves?
We have a lot of information that's available to the public. We have petabytes. It's enormous. We do 3 censuses, not just decennial population, but also a census of businesses, a census of governments. We do 130 surveys that span the spectrum of policy issues that are important to you and important to Latinos, including data where you can disaggregate and take a look at that. We have, all you have to do is go to census.gov or data.census.gov and have at it. Data is absolutely critical, a critical tool, an element for allowing the empowerment of the Latino population. But remember, the biggest tool we have is not the data. The data, it's you. And so keep in mind, again, it's your perspectives that need to be, your voices that need to be heard in terms of interpreting the data from your perspectives, because all too often it gets misinterpreted. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Robert. And the census, very rich data sets that we use at Stanford for our research over there as well, so thank you for that. Just pivoting on the whole issue of how to capitalize on the data insights to kind of drive growth. And so, Jose, how would you answer that question or just talk about that issue?
Well, I'll start out with a little bit of an anecdote because as a kid, my mom would rub Vivaporub, how many of you know what that is, all over my body, inside my nose. And, the reality is that somebody still needs to come up to me and explain to me why it is that I should be using that product. You heard it earlier about, let's say, for example, the political elements involved in the data that you just saw. And I grabbed Richard's deck and I said, I need to grab this before you leave. The reality is we know that the Hispanic or Latino community is shifting. We understand it. We recognize it that economy is one of the most important elements. You saw it there. Inflation is one of the most critical elements. But yet, my parents will call me and say, you know who you're voting for. And I'm sure they're doing the same thing for you. And it doesn't matter whether you're of Mexican-American origin or Cuban origin. we all have our parents that significantly impact who we're voting for. But yet, when we look at the data, when we look at analyze the information that's being presented to us, we recognize that we are no longer a monolith, that we are no longer just looking at the left versus the right, but instead we're making individual decisions, and they're based on our own individual needs and our own individual, really, categories that impact our families. It's no longer, hey, everybody's going to vote for the left, everybody's going to vote for the right, just depending, and therefore the political machine is just going to go ahead and spend money where they think we are going to head. We are no longer going to be taken for granted. We are an incredibly strong voting bloc. And there are certain states where we are going to make the decision. There are certain states where we are going to be the deciding factor. And they need to listen to us. And they need to recognize that, in fact, we are going to be the ones that are going to be shaping the election in some of these markets. It's the advantage of listening to all information. It's the advantage to listening to all candidates, both Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and you making a decision. You making a decision as to what's best for you and what's best for your household.
Thank you, Jose. Appreciate that. Jenny, you're in a very important position in doing the global talent acquisition. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you use data to make an impact in the role that you're in?
Yes, absolutely. And I mentioned one size does not fit all, right? And if I wouldn't look at the data, I would be like, okay, that's just the way it is. So intentionality. So I'll give you a couple of examples for those of you employers that are looking for talent. It's not just, for example, in your marketing material, say se habla español, right? Or like just translating everything into English. It's like, what is the value proposition for the candidates that they can see themselves in the culture, in the purpose of our company, et cetera? Do you have recruiters that can connect with the candidates in the culture, in the language? Yes. Are you adding the bilingual requirement in the many, many roles because our population is changing? So if we want to best serve our patients, we want to introduce that kind of intentionality. So because of data, we were able to go from 6% representation on the talent that we were getting to 10 in just a matter of 2.5 years. So that's why it's really important. Thank you. The data, the representation, and the intentionality. Now, on retention, because that's another really hot topic out there. And I hate that topic because, honestly, all of us choose where we want to be. It's really all about craving that culture that wants the candidate or the talent to say, yes, I want to be here. So when it comes to that, it gets more complex because the data that you get available or that you can use is like things like the pulse data. You know what I'm talking about, like the pulse data of a company? And guess what? We're like, oh, I'm so humble about this opportunity. Oh, I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so optimistic. And if I don't know better, I say, these Latinos are the happiest people in the world, so I don't have to worry about them, right? So that's whenever you say, okay, let's do some focus groups, free coffee, cafecito chats, let's really get to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's how we were able to get that input, not just the data, but the context, right, to better design the programs and do what we have to do from a retention perspective. So it's really, really important. So again, intentionality, representation, and one size does not fit all. Oh, one more thing. One thing that, just super quick. Am I still on?
Yes.
Oh, I thought I got the applause. Something that we are learning right now, I don't know if you guys are finding the same thing, is that the experience is not just one umbrella under the Latino umbrella. There's different experiences. For example, the country you come, if you're first or second generation, if you're going through the immigration process, all of those experiences are different. So now we're getting even more granular in the data to really understand the experience of our talent. That gets more tricky. So then we need to be more creative because si se puede, right?
Great. Thank you, Jenny. So, Elvita, what challenges or obstacles have you faced or observed in transforming raw data into action?
Thank you. I would say, so I lead a team, and we at Salesforce oversee and work with what's called the Warm Line. It's an employee listening line for underrepresented talent, are women of all races, ethnicities, Black, Latinx, Indigenous, and our LGBTQ plus communities. And so we were mentioning before, people do pulse checks, right, surveys. At Salesforce, I'm really proud that we implemented this retention program, that we do one-on-one conversations with underrepresented talent. And so they file a ticket. We have what we call a warm line advocate who will meet with them one-on-one and talk to them, hear what's going on. We collect that data. We are able to, because of personalized touch and creating these safe spaces, we're able to collect much more robust data, right? We've been very intentional about creating this one-on-one engagement to make sure that we are collecting that data. Now, the challenges that we face is protecting the data, protecting the employees who share that data, because we need that information to better the business, but we don't want to compromise the careers of the talent that we're working with, right? So that's definitely been a challenge, but we've mitigated for that. We're very careful as we evaluate the data, as we aggregate it, bring it together, as we share it with the business. We're very intentional to make sure that we're not compromising anyone or outing anyone. So that can present a challenge, but these things can be solution. It can be complex when we're analyzing the data. We're small enough right now that we can dig deep and go through all the feedback that we receive. As we scale, that can be a lot more complicated. But those are some of the challenges that we experience. But I think today's day and age, data privacy is something that we really need to take seriously as AI moves forward. So I think that's another area. And there's growing bodies of data governance. So that is an area that has to be looked at when you're developing systems to collect data, right? How are you governing your data? What is making sure? Who's checking the data? What kind of layers do you have?
Great. Thank you, Elvita. We use data all the time now, arm ourselves so that we can change the opinions of many people. We use that data from Latino Donor Collaborative a lot at Stanford. That is very powerful data, and I urge everybody so that data just comes out of your mouth. And so, Jose, what are some instances in maybe some of those kinds of data-driving decisions that you've seen work at your company, for example?
Excellent. So we merged TelevisaUnivision, the largest producer of Spanish language content in the world, along with the largest distributor of Spanish language content in the US. And one of the first things that we identified in terms of data is that the world is moving to streaming. Surprise. I'm sure many of your kids, many of you are watching more streaming than you are regular TV. And that was a vacuum that existed for the Hispanic community. In fact, for those, how many of you have watched La Casa de Papel? You probably call it Money Heist, right? But how many of us watched it in Spanish with English subtitles? What's incredible to us is that all these hands that are going up, many of them are actually now going into ViX, watching Spanish language content because they're bilingual or their primary language may be English, but yet they fully understand what's going on, and they see some incredibly strong, amazing premieres coming out there. In fact, the data that comes from that is that Hispanics love melodramas. I don't know why. Melodramas are novelas that are in series. So we are producing more content because we have the largest production house. So we get to produce more content that is specifically tailored for Hispanic audience, Spanish language audiences, not only in the US, but Mexico, and soon across the world. We're beating every single large streamer when it comes to Spanish language. Yes, it's a little piece for other competitors, but we are it for Spanish language. And we're continuously growing, and it's only a year and a half old, and the numbers are incredibly strong. But that's what the future is. Many of us don't have TVs at home. Many of our kids don't have TVs at home, but that's where the future is. It's in streaming. It's watching it on your phone. It's watching it on your iPad. It's actually Comcast, Chromecast, and Apple TV. That's the new thing. So frankly, that's the future, and that's how we're leveraging data.
Great, thank you, Jose. Yeah, I'm a consumer of that stuff as well. Yeah, I didn't want to admit it as a husband, but anyway. So I'm going to save the rest of this, the rest of the time that we have, and we're going to jump to the last question, because I think it's a very powerful question. I'm going to ask each of you to give a 1-minute response. So how does data empower us as individuals, and what role does it play in making us make informed decisions and create positive change? So Robert, let's start with you.
Sure. I am a longtime data nerd, and I know that data can be awfully informative. You need to know how to use it, though. You need to understand that it can tell, the same data can tell very different stories, depending on how you frame your approach. So the way I look at it is that, yes, Census Bureau has enormous amounts of data that are available. I mean, it's our mission to provide you with data on our nation's population and economy, and we have tons of information on both to offer you. But at the end of the day, data is simply fuel. It's fodder. And our minds are the engines, and we need to find a way to use our whole selves, as I said, our culture, our values, our life experiences, to supercharge that engine and develop insights that are unique and appropriate for Latino populations. A lot of times, even at the Census Bureau, we have situations where we want to go out into a community and we have a solution, and it can't be a one-size-fits-all. We need to tailor to different communities, Latino communities, tribes, African American, inner city, etc., rurals. And we have learned that we need those diverse voices to look at the data, to analyze the data, to speak up as to what they see in order for us to create those tailored messaging and tailored methods and get more accurate and relevant data for you.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, Elvita.
Thank you. Data is power, and I would say that it doesn't matter what initiative what work you're doing, what initiative you're pursuing, what impact you're trying to make. I'm sure there's a way that you can quantify or qualify it, right? And by that, you can demonstrate your impact over time. Whatever you're doing, you probably need to show that to some stakeholder, right? So how are you doing that? Think about implementing a system using a technology like a Salesforce or similar that can help you quantify or qualify that data to share out, to share the impact that you're making in the work. And don't work blindly, right? These tools can help us be more productive. Most of us got here you didn't get here by chance, right? You were strategic. We need to be strategic in that way with our data. And systems can help us do that. It may not be perfect, of course, right? It's a process. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You're gonna refine that over time, but hopefully that can help you in pursuing whatever agenda or work that you're doing. So I would encourage you to seek solutions to what you're doing to make sure that your impact is quantified or qualified.
Thank you, Elvita. Jose?
Well, I've been very fortunate in my career that I've had C-suite positions in Fortune 20 companies, 2 of them, and in every single scenario, there's always skepticism. Maybe because I came from outside the industry, maybe because I wasn't armed with years and decades of experience. But what I did bring to the table was a fanatic view of data. So when you get to sit in front of somebody and say, wait a minute, the Escalade is selling more in brown and black communities than it is in other communities, why are we pushing that product someplace else? And now all of a sudden the commercials are reflecting who the true buyers are. In my local environment, my job is to be very practical. Here's the data. The data reflects what's going on. You choose or you choose not to follow the data. If you follow the data, it will likely take you to the right destination, or at least you go in with an educated assumption as to the fact that the trends are headed in the right direction. And that's my role. My role is to show you the data. You take it or you leave it in your senior roles in the organization, and maybe you bleed motor oil, and maybe you bleed ketchup, and maybe you bleed other from your background. But the reality is data speaks, and data moves. It's not static. So that's one thing that I believe everybody in this room, when you see the data, whether it's content coming from the Latin Donor Coalition or from Richard's presentation, use it as ammunition. If they take it, great. If they don't take it, hey, you've made an effort.
Thank you. Jenny?
Yes, so I don't know if you have felt like this. Many times in the past, I felt that I was that Latina talking about Latinos, right? And people will be like, oh, there she comes to talk about Latinos again. But the data speaks by itself. So without the data, it can sound like, yes, she's just venting and complaining. But the data is the data. So 3 steps, have clarity. Because otherwise, if you don't have clarity about the problem you're trying to solve, you're going everywhere and nowhere. So have clarity on the problem you're trying to solve. Use the data as your friend and measure so you can really understand return on investment and how fast you're moving the needle.
Great, thank you so much. As a closing comment, I'll just say that, this is great, Claudia. We have so many people here, but in many respects, we are preaching to the choir. Everybody here knows the information, and we have to know it better. But to make change out there, we have to educate others with the data. Without that data, we can't educate anybody. And so, even though Jose said, yeah, here's the data, you choose to believe it or not or take action, but you've educated them in any respect. So data is really important. Thank you all. Thank the panelists here.
Thank you so very much. We're going to take an incredible risk of allowing for a break of 10 minutes. So let's go. Please come back 4:20 so that we can get going with the program. Thank you so much.